Can you get more specific with that? I feel like with a business owner audience, this is something that's really important for everyone listening. Can you give an example maybe of something you saw frequently that companies were doing wrong, and then maybe something that you guys frequently suggested or that a lot of these businesses could benefit from incorporating?
Yes, so a couple of things. So when you go to your website, first time, the moment so if I clicked on your website and I saw all white males, you have now shown me you are not a diversity company. And so right off the bat, a person trying to get a job doesn't know if they have a voice or not when they're coming into your company. So first thing is like, how do you get leadership that's more diverse? So that's one. Two is how are you, what process that you have in place to allow for a person of color or a woman to advance in your company? And what are processes in place that everyone has a voice? So a lot of companies want to do that, but they don't have things in place. So like they don't have like ERG groups. And so what these are is like monthly meetings where people of diversity can get together and like talk about what's going on in the company, talk about like what they like, what they dislike. And these groups then report to HR and say, this is like what's going on in our company. These groups can actually measure the heartbeat of your company. Um, Companies don't do enough assessments, so they want to do a yearly assessment once a year instead of doing something like quarterly. So then that way they again know the pulse of their company and they're not waiting to something blows up and then like that's in the newspaper. Like you could have had a handle on this a lot earlier. So those like are two major functions. And you talk about unconscious bias, which is like one of the big things that people talk about. Um, so when you say unconscious bias is like a person being able to think and being able to understand their biases and then have that challenged. One of the things I used to talk about, like someone being their authentic self, you're allowed to be your authentic self without treading on someone else's ability to be their authentic self. So as long as you're not imposing or oppressing someone else with your thoughts, then you can actually work on unconscious bias because you're allowed to share that and have that challenge, but you're not allowed to be hateful and have that kind of messages going around. And so, and then the other thing that companies don't do when they think about diversity, equity, inclusion, they do not map their plans to their strategic plans. So if you map um, your diversity, equity, and inclusion plans to your strategic plans, now you're mapping it to your dollars, right? So your plan affects the profitability of your company. And so I think those are just some practical ways that companies can actually do this. And then you don't make the training mandatory. Companies make a big mistake. You know, like when Starbucks had that event, and so they say it's like we're gonna just mandatorily teach everyone this training. Well, now you've made it look like it's like punitive and it's forced. And when something is forced, and I think I'm gonna get in trouble, then I hide. So you don't get to see the true like my true self. And so then you can't tackle the problem, right? Because not everyone's scared because of a diversity, equity, and inclusion. Instead of making it like voluntary and making like one like it bubbles up, you have a group and they kind of go tell their peers and like this is really important. Instead of saying, hey, if you don't do this, you're going to get in trouble. So I think that's another practical way that companies can do diversity and equity and inclusion training. Um, for their HR practices, a lot of times if you can like take out the name in those, and so if you take out the name and you take out the what the name of the college and just take that experience, it allows you to also to hire more diverse people because you know we have biases on People have biases when they see names. People have biases when they see colleges. Right. So if I see Stanford compared to um, Pikes Peak Community College, I'm automatically going to say Stanford is the highest school, and I'm gonna have that bias towards that. But the person from Pikes Peak Community College can actually be the best candidate, but you will never know because of the biases that's built into your hiring practices.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting about the names. I've heard the research that certain names are discriminated against. So you you make the obvious suggestion there. Just when you're reviewing the resumes, you have someone white out the names when you
Right.
review them.
And
Easy
then
enough.
another thing for people of like the transgender community. So instead of having, and this is like a really simple change. So instead of having on your application male or female, you have pronouns. So you have like he, him, and his, and like she, hers, and hers, and then them, they, and theirs. And so what that does, it allows someone automatically saying they're thinking about me. And again, it makes that process that much easier on that person coming in the door.
What really great advice for business owners. I mean, here in just 10 minutes time, if people would take those notes, they could be way ahead of where they are now. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.